What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics, and today we're going to have a fun one. We got the top 10 protest songs of the 1960s, not written by Bob Dylan, from our friend, longtime patron and supporter of the channel, D. Thank you, D. And I've already done the research for this. D knows his stuff, so I know this is going to be a fantastic list. And D had this to say about this list. He said, I decided to exclude Bob Dylan because this would almost be a Bob Dylan top 10 list if I didn't. There are also many songs that belong here, but I have two other objectives. First, I didn't want to include other songs that I've included in previous top 10 lists. That would exclude The Great Mandela, or If I Had a Hammer by Peter, Paul, and Mary, or We Can Be Together by Jefferson Airplane. Second, I want to include songs and artists you don't hear very often these days. That would exclude obvious choices like Revolution, Gimme Shelter, Eve of Destruction, or Give Peace a Chance. Some of these songs can easily be related to events in the current day. Others are strictly the era they were created. I'll leave it to the viewer which falls into which category. I guess that's all in perspective, isn't it? I realize that there are a lot of topics included here that continue to be controversial and that all viewers might not see things as I do. All I ask is that you give the songs a chance. Exactly, man. That's all we ever ask. So before we get started, I'll let you know the music will not be in the video, but it will be in a Vimeo link below if you want to watch along with us. We're going to kick this thing off with a song I actually know. I don't know it super well. Trey and I ran the entire Doors discography, the Morrison years. We got Unknown Soldier at number 10 from the album Waiting for the Sun back in 1968. A very underrated album, by the way. D says the Doors didn't do much in the way of protest music. This is one exception. It's a combination of violence and hope for the future in a way that only Jim Morrison could write. I found it's the lead single, became their fourth top 40 hit at number 39. That's what a lot of people don't know. They didn't have early chart success, man. It's been perceived as Jim's reaction to the Vietnam War and the way that conflict was portrayed in the American media at the time. According to author Richie, Morrison was inspired to write the lyrics after visiting the tomb of the unknown soldier at the Arlington National Cemetery in November of 1967. Reportedly, producer Paul Rothchild was so particular about how the song came out and that it ultimately took over 130 takes to finish. And at the time, as is probably going to be the case for many of these songs, many radio stations refused to play it because it was controversial. All right, I'm going to have the lyrics up as always. Thanks again, D. The Unknown Soldier, The Doors. Now, Jim Morrison knew what he spoke of about the military. He grew up a military brat. His dad was actually a rear admiral in the U.S. Navy. And not only that, but his dad was actually commanding the naval forces during the Gulf of Tonkin incident in August of '64, which kind of started our involvement in the Vietnam War. So I wonder what his dad thought of this song, because his dad would have had a unique perspective to it. I think it's a really good song. I think they actually could have even done more with it, right? There's not a ton of lyrics to it, but I can see the power of it and how people would be freaking out at the time. It's like, wait until the war is over and we're both a little older, the unknown soldier. Then that chorus, breakfast where the news is read, television, children fed, unborn living, living dead, bullets strike the helmet's head, and it's all over for the unknown soldier. And then you get that part, that break in there that's so unique. You can hear the marching in the military. Then eventually you get the march, company halt, present arms, and you hear it all. Make a grave for the unknown soldier, nestled in your hollow shoulder, the unknown soldier. Bullet strikes the helmet's head. And then the outro, it's all over, baby, all over, baby. So very powerful and a very good choice to start off D's top 10 list. Now we'll go to one of D's favorite artists. We got Jefferson Airplane with Crown of Creation from the album of the same name in 1968. D said Paul Kantner wrote many protest and science fiction songs over the years. This is one of my favorites. It talks about the inability of any of the younger generation to function in the world except in ways approved by the older generation, right? You got to have the parents' approval, your teacher's approval, your boss's approval. I found the lyrics from the song mostly taken from John Wyndham's science fiction novel, The Chrysalids. I don't know how you say that word. We'll go with that. Published in 1955. The book is set in a post-apocalyptic society where individuals with mutations are persecuted and they're believed to have been created by the devil. This is because the society they live in follows a strict form of Christianity. I'm going to tell you I'm a Christian. That's no form of Christianity, but I get it. Crown of Creation, Jefferson Airplane. I mentioned it, dirty, great guitar work in here. The instrumentation has that psychedelic feel to it a little bit. You are the crown of creation. You got no place to go. Soon you'll attain the stability you strive for in the only way that it's granted, in a place among the fossils of our time. So seeking that approval. So doing things that you really don't want to do, but that's just because it's society's norm. Now, usually that's a good thing, right? We live in a society of laws, but it's not always a good thing. You can't just fall in line if the things that are being done is wrong. And the bridge and loyalty to their kind, they cannot tolerate our minds, and loyalty to our kind, we cannot tolerate their obstruction. And then the outro after a long instrumentation run, life has changed, how it differs from the rocks. I've seen their ways too often for my liking. New world's the game, my life is to survive and be alive for you. So, yeah, just another good choice there. You know, this list is going to be more about lyrics. You're going to go out more lyrics out of me. It's not going to be as much about instrumentation, but I'll point out the highlights. I mean, that first track was classic Doors instrumentation. You know it the second you hear it. If you know the Doors well, it's like, yeah, man, this is a Doors song. And this song had great instrumentation as well. Now we're up to number 8 from Joan Baez, someone who we don't really have anything up on the channel, and she's been in a couple top 10 lists, just appeared in as a song, but I don't know why. We just don't. We need to get more Joan up in here. Birmingham Sunday from the album Joan Baez 5, or just 5 if you prefer. Dee says the song was written by her brother-in-law Richard Farina and invokes the names of the 4 children killed in a church in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963 by members of the Ku Klux Klan. Dee says, I've always thought her voice is one of the most beautiful to come out of the 60s, and it lends itself perfectly to the heartbreaking tale. I found just a little bit more detail about it. It's the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in September of 63. It killed 4 girls, injured 22 others. The girls, 3 of them were 14, one of them was 11. The melody of the song comes from a traditional Scottish ballad named I Once Loved a Lass. Birmingham Sunday. Joan Baez, Dee was right, like this voice, I mean, her voice is just fantastic. It's a voice and an acoustic, and it draws you in. And I mean, verse by verse, she names out the 4 young ladies that lost their lives. I mean, it's a powerful emotional experience listening to this when you know what it's about. The last verse, there's 8 verses, the last verse, the Sunday has come and the Sunday is gone, and I can't do much more than to sing you a song. I'll sing it so softly, it'll do no one wrong, and the choirs keep singing of freedom. And of course, with the racism that was rampant in the United States in the 60s, and it's still rampant right now in the 2020s, I'm sure there was a group of people who were offended by this song. I don't know how you could be, but I'm sure there was. And if you're offended by this song now, you're probably in the wrong place, and you can go ahead and move along. But wow, just powerful, man. So powerful. Now we'll go to Society's Child by Janis Ian. Dee said Janis Ian wrote this song at the age of 14. It was released 3 times between 1965 and 1967, but it did not become popular until it was featured by Leonard Bernstein on a television show in April of 67. Several radio stations banned it. Haven't heard that, right? And she received hate mail and death threats. Interracial relationships were a very touchy subject at the time, to say the least. A little bit about Janis, because I'd never heard of her. She's an American singer-songwriter who was most commercially successful in the 60s and 70s. She's won 2 Grammy Awards, the first in 1975 for the song At 17, and the second all the way in 2013 for Best Spoken Word Album for her autobiography, Society's Child, with a total of 10 nominations in 8 different categories in the Grammys over the years. She's also a columnist and a science fiction writer. And the lyrics of this song focus on the feelings of a young girl who witnessed the humiliation that her African-American boyfriend receives from the girl's mother and the taunts that she herself endures from classmates and teachers. It closes with her decision to end a relationship with a boyfriend because of her inability to deal with the social pressure. So remember, she wrote this when she was 14. She said she dreamed up the song when she was 13. She just didn't put it to writing. So keep that in mind as you listen to this song. It's crazy someone this age came up with this. Society's Child, in parentheses, Baby I've Been Thinking, Janis Ian. A really well done song. It had great instrumentation and a great sound of the 60s. We got a harpsichord in there. Janis is playing the piano. And I was reading her quote where she just said she wrote the song. She saw an interracial couple holding hands on the bus, and it made her think, like, I wonder if their parents know, if anybody's going to tell them, and it probably won't last because it won't be able to take society's pressure. So, that's what this song really conveys quite well. I like in verse 2, walk me down to school, baby. Everybody's acting deaf and blind until they turn and say, why don't you stick to your own kind? My teachers all laugh, their smirking stares, cutting deep down in our affairs. Preachers of equality. So it could be people who are going for equal rights, or more likely it's an actual preacher or a pastor, which I used to be one. And, you preach that all men are created equal until you get into these instances, and all of a sudden it's like, you need to be with your kind. Like, either believe it or don't believe it. It's not picking out parts of it, right? Think they believe it, then why don't they just let us be? They say, I can't see you anymore, baby, can't see you anymore. Verse 3, one of these days I'm going to raise my glistening wings and fly, but that day will have to wait for a while. Baby, I'm only society's child. When we're older, things may change, but for now, this is the way they must remain. So she's breaking up with him, not because she wants to, because society is forcing her into it. And how many times are people forced into what society wants? So a very good commentary, an unreal commentary to be dreamed up by a 13-year-old and written by a 14-year-old. Now up to song number 6 on D's top 10 protest songs of the 1960s that are not Bob Dylan. We got a song that I do know. I just heard it not that long ago, a few months ago. Nina Simone, Mississippi. I'll just say GD. I'm a Christian. I don't say that word. I don't think I'm going to get struck down or anything, but we're told in the Bible not to say that word. But Mississippi GD, Nina Simone, 1964. Dee says Nina was a classical pianist before she turned to pop, jazz, and as she called it, cocktail music to make a living. She spent some time at Juilliard. In 1964, she wrote and recorded the song as a result of the murders of Emmett Till and Medgar Evers in Mississippi and the 4 children killed in a church bombing in Alabama in 1963, right? We just covered that. She described it as her first civil rights song. It was the first of many. It was on her live album, Nina Simone in Concert, and released as a single. It was banned in many states. You see the predominant theme here. I just found she composed this in less than an hour, and in 2019 it was selected by the Library of Congress for preservation and the National Recording Registry for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. That is a great honor. Let's check it out. What a powerful song, right? You got to remember, she's singing this to a mostly white audience at Carnegie Hall. The introduction, the name of this tune, she says the name of the tune, and I mean every word of it because she knew this would cause great backlash, right? Racism is already incredibly violent, obviously, what she's singing about, and she knew this was going to bring her much more scrutiny, but she doesn't care. It's like, Alabama's got me so upset, Tennessee made me lose my rest, and everybody knows about Mississippi. GD, can you see it? Can you see it? It's all in the air. I can't stand the pressure much longer. Somebody say a prayer. And then in there she goes the chorus, and this is a show tune, but the show hasn't been written for it yet, and people kind of laugh. I wonder if people are kind of awkward in their being white and listening to this, but if they're coming to see Nina, maybe they're not of that thought. Like, not everybody was racist in America in the 60s, guys. It was a segment of people. It was a large segment of people, but it wasn't everybody. So I don't want people, thinking, especially outside of the U.S., that like everybody was racist. That was not the case at all. It's just those who have racist and discriminatory beliefs, they yell the loudest, right? So it makes them appear to be a larger number than they are. But I mean, they were a large number. So she just kind of goes on and tells the story. She basically doesn't want to take it slow. It's time we don't take this thing slow. Picket lines, school boycotts. They try to say it's a communist plot. All I want is equality for my sister, my brother, my people, and me. Oh, this whole country is full of lies. You're all going to die and die like flies. I don't trust you anymore. You keep on saying, go slow. So, yeah. And the last chorus, you don't have to live next to me. Just give me my equality. Look, we don't have to become best friends. Just give me my rights as a human being, guaranteed both by the U.S. Constitution and the Holy Bible. I am a person. I am a human being. So a great song and a courageous song. Now up to song number 5. A guy who I know his name, but I don't know if I've ever heard any of his stuff. We got Handsome Johnny from Richie Havens from the Mixed Bag album in 1966. Dee says Richie had one of the smoothest voices in folk music. He played in coffee houses in Greenwich Village in the early 60s. In 1965, Albert Grossman, who was Bob Dylan's manager, signed him and he released the album Mixed Bag in 1966. This is from that album. He co-wrote the song with actor Louis Gossett Jr. He later performed an abbreviated version of this as part of the opening performance at Woodstock. Handsome Johnny. First of all, the acoustic guitar was fantastic, right? Drove the song. The song is so well written because I think it's talking about a black soldier as he, the black soldiers were fine when we needed to fight, right? There was no racism. I mean, I know there's racism in the military, but it was like, oh yeah, you're good enough to come over here. You can't eat with us or drink out of our water, but you can come over here and fight. So he starts out with what looks like Handsome Johnny with a musket in his hand because they're at Concord. So you go from the Revolutionary War to Gettysburg in the Civil War. So he's got a flintlock in his hand. And then we go to Dunkirk, so World War I with a carbine in his hand. Then we go to Fields of Korea with an M1 in his hand. We go to Vietnam with an M15 in his hand. Then they're marching to the fields of Birmingham, right? Looks like Handsome Johnny with his hand rolled in a fist. So I thought that was great. And then he says at the end, hey, what's the use of singing this song? Some of you are not even listening. Tell me what it is we've got to do. Wait for our fields to start glistening. Hey, wait for the bullets to start whistling. Hey, here comes a hydrogen bomb and here comes a guided missile. So, I mean, and now it's like it's the end of the world, right, as we know it. So, yeah, man, just a fantastic. I mean, I enjoyed his voice, but the song itself was just great. Next up, Country Joe and the Fish with the song I Feel Like I'm Fixing to Die. Now, it's also on here. It starts out with the fish cheer, but that's just in the song, so it's kind of got to be played that way. Dee said after all this heavy music, thought it was time for a little humor. Country Joe McDonald formed the band with Barry the Fish Melton after he left the Navy in 1965. They were very active in the Berkeley free speech movement at the time. They released this song in late 1967. With its dark humor and satire, it became one of the most well-known protest songs of the time. I had a friend who wanted it banned on the radio. So even with a sense of humor, however dark, music could be very dividing as well as uniting. I just found its dark humor and satire made it one of the most recognized protest songs against the Vietnam War. Critics cite the composition as a classic of the countercultural era. The song was usually preceded by the Fish cheer, a cheer spelling out F-I-S-H, an altered version of the cheer that was performed in live performances known as the, it also begins with an F, but it ends with a K. You can fill in the other two. Resulted in a television ban for Country Joe and the Fish in 1968 for the vulgarity, but was applauded by concert goers. The song's lyrics implicitly blame American politicians, high-level military officers, and industry corporations on starting the Vietnam War. I can think of a couple of Dylan songs that talked about this as well. Country Joe and the Fish. What a powerful song here with the Fish cheer, and I feel like I'm fixing to die rag. I mean, it's just intense. And I mean, I know there's an art to, you know, like the way the music is arranged and, you know, kind of almost in a zany type of way at times. That you know, there's an art to that of like delivering a very strong message and then softening it up with music. I think this actually would have been way stronger if it was just straightforward sang. I know that's not really what they did apparently, but you know, that kind of wasn't their style. But it's so good. Now come on, all of you big strong men. Uncle Sam needs your help again. He's got himself in a terrible jam way down yonder in Vietnam. So put down your books, pick up a gun. Gonna have a whole lot of fun. And it's 1, 2, 3 in the chorus. What are we waiting for? Don't ask me. I don't give a damn. Next stop is Vietnam. And it's 5, 6, 7. Open up the pearly gates. Ain't no time to wonder why. Whoopee. We're all going to die. I mean, geez, man. And then talks about the generals. Let's move fast. Got to get those Reds. The only good commie is the one that's dead. And you know that peace could only be one. And when we've blown them all, the kingdom come. Kind of talking about the absurdity of that. And then Wall Street's in verse 3. Why, man, this is a war a go-go. There's plenty of good money to be made by supplying the army with the tools of the trade, the war machine, man. And then verse 4, well, come on, mothers throughout the land. Pack your boys off to Vietnam. Come on, fathers, don't hesitate. Send them off before it's too late. Be the first one on your block to have your boy come back in a box. And then he ends out the chorus. So, I mean, lyrically, this song is as fire and in your face as you can get. All right, you see it, boy. We got Pete Seeger. This was a single in 1967. We got the song Waist Deep in the Big Muddy. D says Pete Seeger was blacklisted on television in the 50s for his affiliation with the Communist Party in the 30s and 40s. He had managed to whittle away at the blacklist in the 60s by hosting a regional folk music television show out of an educational channel in Newark, New Jersey. Finally, in September of 67, he was invited on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour's fall premiere as his first nationally broadcast performance. He performed this song, but CBS insisted that the last verse be deleted. Rather than do that, the song was deleted entirely, as the last verse is what makes the point of the song. Finally, CBS relented, and it was shown complete in February 68, perhaps to Lyndon Johnson's chagrin. And I found the song tells the story of a platoon waiting in a river in Louisiana on practice patrol in 1942. Ignoring his sergeant's concerns, the captain orders the platoon to continue with himself in the lead till they're finally up to their necks. Suddenly, the captain drowns, and the sergeant instantly orders a unit to turn back to the original shore. It turns out the captain was not aware that the river was deeper with a joining stream upriver. The narrator declines to state an obvious moral, but intimates from what he has read in the paper that his nation itself is being led into similar peril by authoritarian fools. Each verse ends with a line noting that the big fool said to push on, except for the final verse, which changes to the present tense, and the fourth verse, which says the captain dead and gone. This is similar to something known as the Ribbon Creek incident that occurred in 1956. It was considered symbolic of the Vietnam War and LBJ's policy of escalation. Like the captain's demise, LBJ was eventually forced to abandon plans for re-election due to the war in 68. The captain's criticism of a dissenting sergeant as a nervous Nelly in the song's third verse appears to mimic Johnson's epithet for critics of the war. Waist Deep in the Big Muddy, Pete Seeger. Obviously, that was a live performance, but it's hard to find this song in the quote single version. I mean, he's just adding just a little bit at the end than what was on the actual official version, but just tells a great story. Like I said, I don't really got to go through the lyrics and just Pete's guitar. He's up there singing. I don't think I've ever heard a Pete Seeger song, like heard him sing one. I don't know. I don't think I have, but really good song. And the moral of the story is a couple things, right? The authorities get you into stuff when you're below them that you really can't avoid because you got to listen to them. And they have egos and they cannot admit when they're wrong, so they just push on, and that's how you end up drowning because you're pushing on the river, and that's how you end up starting a little bitty war and knowing you're going to win it, and then all of a sudden you're not, and then you got to throw more and more and more people and resources at it, and then you don't end up winning anyway. So that's what the egos in this and the pride in this world will do. Got 2 songs left. Number 2, I Ain't Marching Anymore by Phil Oakes from I Ain't Marching Anymore, the album in 1965. D says Phil Oakes referred to himself as a topical singer, at least in part to his studies in journalism in college. He moved to New York City in 1962 and started playing in the local venues that year, everywhere from coffee houses to Carnegie Hall. He wrote dozens of songs noted for their sharp wit, sardonic sense of humor, and direct political lyrics. His songs include Outside a Small Circle of Friends, The Draft Dodger Rag, and Love Me, I'm a Liberal. This selection is from 1965 and covers many different conflicts and causes over the years. I just found that he wrote it as an American involvement in the Vietnam War is beginning to grow. Criticizes all of American military history, as D referenced, from the perspective of a weary soldier who has been present in every single war since the War of 1812. The chorus notes that, quote, it's always the old who lead us to war, always the young to fall, and asks whether the price of military victory has been too high. Oakes said of the song that it borders between pacifism and treason, combining the best qualities of both. He also wrote, quote, the fact that you won't be hearing this song on the radio is more than enough justification for writing it. I thought that was a great quote. In August of 68, he performed this song during the protests outside the Democratic National Convention, inspiring hundreds of men to burn their draft card. He described it as the highlight of his career. He was subsequently called as a witness in the trial of the Chicago 7, which is a great Netflix show on this, who were charged with conspiracy and other crimes related to the protest. The defense attorneys asked Oates to sing this song, but the judge wouldn't allow it. So instead, he just recited these lyrics. So, I mean, this song is historically significant. I Ain't Marching Anymore. What a powerful song, Phil and his acoustic. And he does take you through the different battles. The Battle of New Orleans, he was there at Little Bighorn. Then that bridge, it's always the old to lead us to the war, it's always the young to fall. But now look at all we've won with the saber and the gun. Tell me, is it worth it at all? Then he's like, verse 3, for I stole California from the Mexican land, fought in the bloody Civil War. Yes, I even killed my brothers and so many more. But I ain't marching anymore. Then he's down in the German trench. And then he flew the final mission in the Japanese sky, so dropping the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Set off the mighty mushroom roar. When I saw the cities burning, I knew that I was learning that I ain't marching anymore. So it changed up a little bit because now everything has changed, right? Nobody's marching into cities and stuff. It's done in a different way. And then it ends with now the labor leaders screaming when they close the missile plants. United Fruit screams at the Cuban shore. Call it peace or call it treason. Call it love or call it reason. But I ain't marching anymore. No, I ain't marching anymore. Wow. Fantastic song from Phil Oakes there. I'd never even heard of Phil Oakes. And now we're here to the final track, track number 1 on D's top 10 protest songs of the 1960s, not written by Bob Dylan. We got My Country 'Tis of Thee, People You're Dying by Buffy St. Marie from the Little Wheels Spin and Spin album in 1966. D says Buffy was born into the Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, Canada. She was abandoned as an infant and adopted by Albert and Winnie St. Marie, who were of McCormick descent and lived, I probably messed that up, and lived in Massachusetts. She attended UMass and Amherst and received her degrees in teaching and Oriental philosophy. She graduated in the top 10 of her class. She began singing in coffee houses in Toronto and New York in the early 1960s. Interestingly, she later won an Oscar for co-writing Up Where We Belong from the movie An Officer and a Gentleman, which ironically, Louis Gossett Jr. won an Academy Award for that movie, An Officer and a Gentleman, and he co-wrote song number 5, Handsome Johnny, with Richie Havens, so that's kind of a little bit of tie-in there. She says she has a very distinctive voice. There are very few songs that made me cry when first listening to them. This is one of them. It relates to the treatment of Native Americans over the centuries. She uses her voice to show anger, heartbreak, bitterness, and sorrow. It is very effective and perfect for the purpose. When I first heard it, my question was, is this all true? After research, it's 100% the truth. Wow. Wow, what a powerful song, what a powerful story. When I was in school, just as, we didn't really get into all that too much, and it was really presented as the Indians were the enemy. I mean, at some points they're nice and then they become the enemy, and they were here first. So that's why I always laugh with the racist white bigots that we have here in America, that this is our country. Really? Because it's really not. It's not our country. We came and stole it. So anyway, I won't get on that, but it It always makes me laugh, man, when people are laugh not in a good way, just like ironic, like, this is not your country. It's not your country, man. It's the Native Americans' country. They were here first. And that's kind of what this is about. You know, how they're taught to do away with their customs. And it just, there's so much powerful lyrics to it. It's hard to really break it all down. But I thought the instrumentation was right. It didn't take away at all. I was drawn immediately into her voice, right? And her voice is unique. And the story she's telling. So there's some acoustic in there. And there might be something else, guys, because that's how powerful it was. Like, you just get drawn into the lyrics, which is the idea of it. So a great choice for number one on Dee's Top 10 Protest Songs of the 60s, not written by Bob Dylan. Now we're getting to my favorites. Honorable mention, we're going to go with Waist Deep in the Big Muddy by Pete Seeger, song number 3. We're also going to go with Feeling Like I'm Fixing to Die Rag by Country Joe and the Fish. Like I said, I didn't care for the arrangement, but I know that's their style, but it still gets an honorable mention. My faves, we're going to go with I Ain't Marching Anymore by Phil Oakes. That was the number 2 song. We're going to go with Mississippi GD by Nina Simone. And my favorite, Handsome Johnny, Richie Havens. But all these songs are really good. So well put together by Dee. I know it took him a long time to do this list. I'm going to tell you why. You probably know why because you just listened to it. But it's a very difficult thing to choose these songs, and there's so many of them out there. And I just thought you did a great job, Dee. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Let me know your favorite songs down below, some other ones that I should check out. Let's keep with the theme and that are not Dylan. I've checked out most of the Dylan ones from the 60s and all the reviews and reactions we've done on the channel. But if you like sports anyway, check out the Patreon link below or the Patreon link on the end screen. Until next time, guys, I will see you.